somebody that was involved with somebody.
Right.
That's how it works, basically, yeah.
It's more for the put it on my CV, it's not both my position.
I didn't know that, actually, right? Okay, so this is the website, like if you're a mathematician and you've published with co-authors, you can find out, or you can do it with the bank if you've ever acted. So it's coming back to the sort of specifics of network analysis. These were the nodes that we talked about before. This is obviously not a network because we've got n is 12, so we've got 12 nodes, but we have no links between them. So P is the number of nodes with links, which in this case is 0, and K is the number of links, which in an unpopulated network like that also 0. This one here, everyone is connected to everyone else. So n is 12, P is 1, and K approaches n basically. So you have a fully connected network. So how do we calculate these P's and N's and K's? Well, very simply, if you look at this node here, it's connected to two others. Now, if we want to find a path link to someone else, like what the 6 degrees of separation is showing you the path link, if we look at this, the path link between A and B, we can see that, the path link between A and B is 1, 2, 3 steps, right? Can you see that? 1, 2, 3. So that's what the path link is, the 6 degrees, basically. So in that second example, here we have 2 connections to everyone. In the second one, we just put in a few random lines of connections between people, and this story leads to something else that Jacopo is going to talk about, but just counting the path lengths, the change in the path lengths just by putting in a few random connections, it reduces from 3 to 2, basically, or you can find different answers from that. So basically, by putting in a few random connections, even though the random connections are not between A and B, we reduce the path length. Okay? So that's sort of the basic principles of network analysis, and Jacopo can explain it a bit further.
Do you know what clustering coefficient means on a network? Could you explain it?
Well, clustering coefficient is it's the idea that your friends are the likely to be the friends of your friends. So you form a triangle.
So your friends are likely to be friends with each other as well. And another thing I want to ask is, do you know what a random network is? Yes? No? So basically, if I define every dot as a node and every line as an edge, that's the terminology I would use. Then if I scatter buttons, or I scatter these dots around the floor, and I pick 2 things randomly, and then I just randomly decide that these 2 pairs connects, that is how I build a random network. And I have this probability. The probability of 2 nodes being connected. And this probability goes from 0 to 1, and there is up to a point in which every node, you can reach every node from any other node. Is that clear? So you have like a threshold, and a percolation, and a transition, what we talked about in my first lecture. I don't know if you... Is it clear? You wanted to explain it in a different way? Yes? Okay, so basically, a random network is just, it's characterized, it has certain characteristics. So most of nodes will have the same degree. You know what a degree is? It's the number of connections I have. Okay, just that, very simple. And it follows a Poisson distribution. And a random network is built by simply randomly connecting 2 different nodes with a given probability. Is that better? Yeah. But then we have a small ball network is actually in between a random network and a regular lattice. A regular lattice is, in this case, everything is fully connected. Okay? So I start building connections that connect 2 parts that are not connected yet. And I have a different, complete different, that's P is the probability of rewiring. That means that I go from the regular lattice, I start rewiring nodes. Okay? Is it? No, I guess I have to restart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically we have This is a regular lattice, actually. No? So if I start putting connections in the middle, then I reduce the average path length from one node to another. Is that clear? Yes? But I also keep my clustering coefficient very high, because a lot of friends, a lot of nodes that I'm connected to are also connected to each other. Can you see that? And those are the characteristics of a small world network. Okay? If I keep rewiring and keep rewiring, I destroy the clustering coefficient. And this is what this graph shows. You see the clustering coefficient goes down, and the average path length just stays, it's very low. Once it's very low, it stays very low. Okay? So, yeah.
So if everyone is connected to everyone, it's one great big cluster, right? So the clustering coefficient is 1. Yeah. And if no one's connected to anyone, the clustering coefficient is 0. So in a random network, the clustering coefficient is low, right? Because there's not many connections there. And the path length is also low, because as we saw in the previous slide, if you put in a few random lines, you reduce the length, the steps it takes to get to the next person. So that's that right-hand side of that graph there. The path length is low, and the clustering coefficient is coming down depending on the number of connections. In a small world, what you were saying, there's lots of, your friends are friends with each other as well. So there's clusters. So the clustering coefficient in a small world, which basically describes a lot of our friendship networks, is high, but the path length is low because it doesn't take many steps from me through my friends to get to another cluster because there's a link. So basically the characteristics of a small world is that you have high clustering, so these networks of friends, these other networks of friends, but you can get between each other very quickly, so your path length is less than 6 or something. Whereas in a regular lattice, obviously it only takes one step to get to everyone else because everyone is connected to everyone else. And your cluster is 1 because it's just one cluster. So the small world, like the 6 degrees of separation, a lot of people I feel have heard about small world networks because it basically describes the way our friendships are, the shape of our friendships in a network.
The clustering coefficient is fine. Why is the shortest path length high on the regular lattice where it looks like the length is always 1?
I'm sorry, I think there is a slight mistake. That's actually a fully connected network. This one is regular lattice, where everybody has the same degree.
So the one on
the one on the left,
bottom left with the
yes.
AB.
It's like a grid, basically.
Okay.
So that's what I think it's confusing. Because in that case, then you have a long average path length, no?
Yeah.
And a very high clustering coefficient.
Yeah. Okay.
Then as you go to here, to the small world into the random network, you decrease the clustering coefficient and you decrease the average path. And the small world network is in between those 2 points. So very high clustering, very low average distance. A lot of human societies can be thought of as small world. For example, now I'm connected to Australia, but also my friends are connected to Australia with 1 degree because I know English, right? And why are these structures important? Why it is important to know these characteristics on networks? Well, it's okay that a lot of processes can be thought of small world, especially social processes, but a lot of biophysical processes follow actually a power law degree. And that means they resemble a scale-free network when I have one single individual that is very highly connected and a lot of little bits that are very loosely connected. Is the terminology a problem? So you understand the difference between random and scale-free? Scale-free networks were actually came into place in 2099, 2001, with the paper by Albert and Barabasi, and they show that the internet doesn't have a random pattern to it, but follows a power law. That means that there are very few websites that are connected to a lot of websites, but a lot of websites are connected only to another website. Is that clear? Yes? And this has a lot of implications for a lot of dynamical mechanisms like disease spreading, inflammation, and so on. And then, as you can see, the number of nodes with links goes up. And this is basically the degree distribution of power. So if we put these in logs, we will have a straight line. Is that, yeah? And this is why they are important. As we can see, these represent, how do you want to that? This one is represents a random network that follows a Poisson distribution. Okay, so we have the number of edges or links and the number of nodes with that type of links. And this is a scale-free network. Now on log-log scale, you can see it is a straight line. So we have very few nodes with a lot of connections and a lot of nodes with very few connections. Okay? And this is how you can represent them as well. Now what happens is that the random network can represent a railway network, for example, while the airport network of the United States represents a scale-free network. Now what this implies is that in case of an error or an attack, an error is defined as I remove randomly a node from that network. While an attack means that I remove the highest connected node from that network. So I target specific places or specific individuals. I have a complete different outcome. Now what happens if I remove 9 centers, and actually if I remove less than that, the network still connects, but only 7, or only the highest connected on the scale-free network, destroy the system completely. Or by destroying, we mean that it doesn't have a giant component anymore. You can't go from one place to another anymore very easily. Okay. And this is, because this graph I think is much better to explain that. And this is basically what happens. Now this is, you know what a giant component is? In a network, a giant component is basically the size, the biggest size in proportion of the network that is all connected. So if it's 1, everything is connected to everyone. Or you can reach every node from any other node. Is that, yeah? Okay, and so this is the proportion, and this is the fraction of nodes I start taking out. And when I take out a node, I take out all these connections as well, right? So we can see that the difference between failure or error and attack in a random network, also called exponential, it's basically the same. While in a scale-free network, I have a completely different outcome. So a scale-free network is very robust to random takeouts of nodes, but it's very vulnerable to attacks. But it's the same. At the same time, we can see an epidemic spreading on 2 different types of network. The scale-free, in this case, is blue, and the random has a threshold. So it means that in a random network, the epidemic has to reach a certain amount of nodes before it starts to be a real epidemic. While the scale-free network is actually being demonstrated by 2 guys called Pastor Satoras and Bispignani in, I think it was 2001, that the scale-free network do not have a threshold. That means that any disease in a scale-free network can become an epidemic at any time, even if you have only 1 infected person. Okay? It takes a longer time for a random network to happen. And what we've also discovered is that connectivity or structural properties also influence dynamics in crater prey systems. People normally assume that the higher the connectivity, the better for migration of these species, but actually what has been discovered lately is that there is most likely a sweet spot. So if the system is overly connected, it creates problems to the coexistence level of species. While at the same time, if the system is not connected or is very loosely connected, we have a lot of problems as well. So we need to find these sweet spots, and we need to find ways to understand migration patterns of animals. And they might be very important, especially nowadays in terrestrial settings where fragmentation of lines is more and more, it's it's an issue that is more and more pressing because of urbanization.